So I have three pieces here today. Two are from the Tulner Rebbe that we've been using for a while. Called his sefer is called Chamin B'Motzei Shabbat. Those of you who weren't here before, because these are addresses that he gave at Malava Malkus. So he calls it warm food for Motzei Shabbos, referring to the Torah that he's giving. And then I have a piece from Rabbi Hutner, which I'm actually saving for the end. So that's number one. So go to two. We're going to go backwards. 2, 3, and 1. Not backwards to the sheets anyway. So go, if you don't mind going to the second sheet. And let's see the first piece that he says. Okay. So this is probably the most well-known pasuk in the Parsha. He writes, Hine beParshatan, in our Parsha Ksiv, it says, Va'asuli mikdash v'shachanti b'socham. Make for me a mishkan, a tabernacle, a temple, and I will dwell amongst you. B'tocham, plural. Kekol asher ani mareh otcha, everything that I show you, at tavnit hamishkan, the way to build it, the items that you need to build it for construction, ve'et tavnit kol kelav, and all of the vessels that have to be used for the service in the Mishkan, v'chein tasu, and you have to do it exactly the way I show you. V'yeduim b'zeh divrei hamedrash, there's a well-known medrash here that you might be familiar with. The pasuk says, Va'asuli mikdash, make for me a tabernacle, a temple. V'shachanti b'socham, I will dwell amongst you. B'tocho lo nemar, the Medrash doesn't say I'll dwell in you as a general, as a singular unit, the entire Klal Yisrael, amongst the Jewish people. You know, that's what you would think. The Mishkan is there. That means HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Shekhinah is Kaviyachol dwelling amongst the Jewish people, right? But that's not what he means, the Medrash says. Ela b'tocham, I will dwell within each and every one of you. B'toch kol echad v'echad miYisrael. The power of the spiritual energy of the Mikdash is, the Mishkan is, that it will enter, my divinity will enter into you as an individual person. Okay? Ulechuruhu davar tema. Here's the question. Heich yecholim lahavin Mishkan la'ashrat hashchina b'toch kol echad miYisrael. How is it possible to say that the Shekhinah is going to dwell in every single Jew? V'hinei HaTorah Kedosha nitzchit b'chol dor v'dor. He's talking for every generation. U'b'chol neshama miYisrael, and every single Jew. Now, there are Jews and there are Jews. V'halo yesh neshamot shenitrachu meod. There are neshamas, there are Jews that are very far from godliness, right? V'nitma'u v'tumot v'averot kashot, and they did terrible things, right? They live a life of sin. Heich yechola shechina l'sharot b'toch kol echad v'echad miYisrael. So how is it really possible? But this is the promise from the Rebbe. But how is it possible, right? U'me'achar she'ein mikra yotzei b'dei pshuto. The mikra is exactly what it's telling us. Mukach shehakavana b'toch kol echad v'echad miYisrael mamish. That every Jew, the Shekhinah, if you build a Mishkan, I promise you the Shekhinah will dwell amongst you. B'chol adorot, in every generation. V'hu davar tema pella. This is a wonder, and we have to understand what it means, right? It's a beautiful medrash, but I don't think it makes sense, he says, right? So levar zot yesh li lomar b'hakdem tamia rabati sheyesh li tmo b'seder haktuvim. So, like every good Jew, the Tulner Rebbe is going to answer the question with a question. I'm going to ask you a question about the order of the psukim. Okay? But Mesha Amar HaKatuv, it says, Vasuli mikdash, make me a mikdash, v'shachanti b'tocham, and I'll dwell amongst you, right? In other words, the mikdash is already built, right? Kekol asher animaro otcha et tabnit hamishkan, everything I instruct you to building that tabnit kol kelev, and the kelim kenasu, the vessels, that's how you should do it. So Rashi writes, Kekol asher animaro otcha, exactly the way I am showing you, kan et tabnit hamishkan, I'm showing you now how to build this mishkan. Hamikra zeh mechubar lemikra shelamal. This relates to what he just said. Asuli mikdash, Kekol asher ani maro otcha. Make it exactly the way I tell you to, right? Va'af shebemet kachi hamikra zeh mechubar lamala. Really, mikol makom tzarich iyun. Lama lo nemar hakatuv lahal. It should have said like this: Asuli mikdash kekol asher ani maro otcha. Make for me a mikdash. What does he interrupt and say? I'll dwell amongst you. No, make for me a mikdash according to all of the instructions I'm going to give you, right? And then afterwards, I'll dwell amongst you. V'lama nemar hakatuv b'sirus hamikrot. Why is it reversed? La'achar hamukdam ulahakdim hamuchar. There's a line missing there. So the order should be, make for me a mikdash, and here's how you make it. And once you make it, I'll dwell there. Right? He doesn't say that. He says, make for me a mikdash, and I'll dwell there, and this is how you have to make it. Okay? So he's going to answer both questions. Okay? How the Shekhinah can actually possibly get inside every single Jew? How does that happen? And why the order is reversed? And maybe the reason why the order is reversed is to answer that first question. Okay. Bina Hechrich Lomar. I want to say like this: TORAH Kedosha Higdima HaMu'uchar. The reason why the Torah put first, I promise I'll dwell amongst you. B'chtei l'lamadnu derech. It wants to teach us v'hadracha nifla'ah b'yesod nichbad b'darkei avoda. The Torah wants to teach us a fabulous, valuable diamond of a lesson in our service to the Rebbeinu Shalom and how we live our lives according to Torah. Hine, ka'asher amara katuv v'asuli mikdash. When the Torah says, make for me a mikdash, hayta kavana al hashrat hashchina b'toch kol echad ve'echad miYisrael. He means, make for me a mikdash so that I can live amongst every single Jew. That's my plan, right? Make for me a mikdash so I can live amongst you. Remember, there are two words for mikdash, right? For the Beit HaMikdash, mikdash and mishkan, right? Mishkan actually means that God is shochen. He's a shchena, shachen. He's a neighbor of ours, right? Mikdash means that we, the Jewish people, have the possibility to, through the being in the Mishkan, what we do in the Mishkan, the korbanot, the sacrifices, our davening, we can go up to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So that's the power of the Mikdash, is Hashem coming down to us, and also our ability to move ourselves upwardly, to be upwardly mobile spiritually. Okay, so build a Mishkan, right? And I'm going to dwell amongst you, right? Ukemosha Amar Medrash, Ikar Shechina B'Tachtonim Haita. Medrash says that the real presence of God is in this world, right? We think of God's in the high heaven, but no, God exists in this world. Va'avodat kol ish Yisrael, and the challenge and the obligation of every single Jew, lahavi la'ashrat hashchina, to bring out the presence of that godliness. V'hashchanat hashchina b'toch gufo, and to bring it into his own self, his own persona, to take the Shekhinah that exists, the present divine presence, and make it a part of my internal being, right? L'taher, to purify, la'alot gufo l'vchinot kedusha, to elevate ourselves, to improve spiritually. Val derech sheharik, and now he's going to say, this is my great-great-grandfather, the Rebbe Chernobyl, and he said in his Sefer, Shehu Bechinat Chodesh Adar. We're on the cusp of the month of Adar. He said, this is what Adar is all about, right? Bringing everything from the Shekhinah, he's right here with us, and to bring it into ourselves. How's that? Because the word Adar, Aleph Daled Reish, Mirumaz B'Shem HaChodesh Adar, Tevot Aleph Dar. Aleph is Alufo Shel Olam, the Rabbonu Shel Olam. He's number one. He's the number one of all ones, right? So Aleph Dar, Lahashkin Lahachin Dira, B'Tachtonim, La'alufo Shel Olam. The challenge of Adar is to make in the presence of God a dira, a dwelling place in every single Jew. That's what we can do with Adar. Why Adar? I mean, that's the word, right? But Adar is Marbin B'Simcha. So obviously that tells us that Simcha is such an important aspect that by being Misameach, we can do unbelievable things. That's what he's saying here. Amnam ka'asher kol echad ve'echad miYisrael mechashev cheshbono shel olam. Right? So if you start thinking about this, sounds very nice. It's a great idea, right? Aleph Tar, bring God into him, and he's our neighbor, and bring him into our lives, into our home, into ourselves, right? Hare Lev Yodei Marat Nafsho, but we all know what we're all about. Ad kama hitrachek mito Yitborach. How far really we are from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're far away from him, right? So many people have to honestly say that, right? Umin hanimna shiagia likdei midat hashrat hashchina v'hakadusha b'gufa hagashmi v'achumri. How's that going to happen? How is this month of Adar? How is this Shechina, right, going to create what's going to happen there? What happens there? What do we see that's going to motivate us to change our ways? How is the Shekhinah going to dwell in a body that is so involved with materialistic things, with all the gashmiut, the material things of the world, rather than the spirituality? How's that going to happen? Hein hashamayim ushmei hashamayim lo yechalkaluhu ubevadai guf gashami shel ish pashut miYisrael. So there's a wide gap between really every single Jew and the Rebbe, right? So now, Al-Kain, Hikdima, so now he's going to answer why. He's going to explain it, and it has to do with the way he's presented the Mishkan, sort of backwards, right? Al-Kain Hikdima Torah Kedosha Hatevot Hamucharot. Therefore, God put what should have been mentioned last first. Right? He should have said, build me a mikdash, here's how you build it, and I'm going to dwell in you. No, he says, build me a mikdash, and I'm going to dwell in you. Vasuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham. I'll live amongst you. B'tocho lo nemar, ela b'tocham. I'll live amongst every one of you, individually. You will all grow spiritually. You'll all become great people. Lilamed sheyesh lekol echad ve'echad miYisrael yechol lagia lidei ashrat shechina beveito begufo. He's stating a fact there, Baruch, that every Jew does have the ability to change himself and his environment and his house, his home, his everything he does on a higher level. How do you get there? What's the key? Hu al pi hemshech divrei hakatuv. That's the next part. Now I'm going to tell you how, right? So this is in order now. Build me a mikdash. I'm going to dwell amongst you. I am. You're going to have me within you, right? And now I'm going to tell you how. Just do kakol asher ani mareh otcha. Do everything that I tell you individually. Hainu shakadosh baruch hu mara lekol ish Yisrael. What's he showing us? He's giving a lesson to every single Jew. He's showing him at Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, Reya Mehemna, right, the faithful shepherd of the Jewish people. Shehu Mivchara Bria, who is the greatest living human being, and he's going to build the Mishkan. He's leading us. And V'kol ish Yisrael yachol lahagbia enav lirot. And every Jew can look at Moshe and see, Heich Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom, haya yilud isha. Who is Moshe? He's not a malach. He's not an angel. He was born from a mother, just like the rest of us. V'haya basar v'dam. He's flesh. Kechol echad miYisrael, like every Jew, right? Not only that, but he lived in the palace, in Paro's palace. What a negative influence. V'higia adargat ish. Now the words are missing here. I'm going to read it. Ish Elokim. He reached the level of being a man of God. Adarga hagvoa biyoter, on the highest conceivable level possible. That's what he did, right? So now, that's what I'm telling you how you do it. Look at Moshe. Now the next paragraph is just to the left there at the bottom. Yuludi shalavo u'ramezbo. This is a hint to us, a pretty strong hint. Shekol echad ve'echad miYisrael. If you just examine Moshe Rabbeinu, who's leading us, who's telling us all of this, right? Yachol la'agbiu l'kadesh atzmo. You can do it too. You can do it. Ad hadarga hachi gavoa. You can elevate yourself to the highest level spiritually. All you have to do is want to. But I'm giving you the opportunity that the Shekhinah is there. It's going to make it easy for you. Ulezeh pitcha TORAH kedosha. That's why the Torah started out. Va'amra sheyesh lekol echad ve'echad hayachol liot b'vchinat shechinati b'tocham. right? I'm going to dwell betocham, amongst each and every one of you. Yes, you can do it. V'shachanti betocham. V'haderech lavo l'fnei zeh, and how do you do that? Hu lahabit v'lirot b'dmuto b'chinato shel Moshe Rabbeinu. Just look at Moshe Rabbeinu. If you look at Moshe Rabbeinu and everything that he's accomplished, you too should be inspired by that moment. Okay, so the Shekhinah is going to be in the Mishkan. Okay, now this next piece is going to relate because the Parsha deals a lot with the furniture, the kelim, the vessels of the Mishkan, and we're going to talk about the Shulchan, the table, and the Lechem Hapanim, the 12 challahs that miraculously stayed warm from Shabbos to Shabbos and were eaten by the Kohanim, right? So Ksiva Parshatan b'Maisar Shulchan, it says concerning the Shulchan, V'tzipita oto zahav tahor, you should make a rim around the table of pure gold. Now there's a machlok, you should know there's a machlokus actually in the Gemara, whether that rim is on top of the table going around or whether it's underneath the table, a rim. You know, you see tables, like, well, I guess you could say like a pool table, has the rim on top, right? Lahav dilel alfe havdalot, right? And then a regular table will have it underneath, right? So you can have it, so we don't know. Anyway, vasita lo zahav savi, but it has to be gold. V'katav bal haturim. Now, remember, he's speaking at a Malava Malka. The Malava Malka is Sudat David Malkata, because David HaMelech died at this point, Shabbos. So every when we say a Malava Malka is the meal of David HaMelech, right? So he's going to start off with a little bit of a hint of David HaMelech, but it's going to play a role in what we want to say. The Balaturim says Zahav b'gematria David. In Gematria, every letter has a number, right? So David and Zahav are the same, right? They're all 14. David is 14, 4, 6, and 4. Zahav is 7, 5, and 2. So this is not a coincidence. Shehu yizkel l'zar shel malachim, because a person can reach, if you have a table, right? You can reach the level of David HaMelech. In what way, we'll find out. But it's a very important point because the Gemara says that the Shulchan is mechaper for us. The power of the table in the Beit HaMikdash is to provide atonement for the Jewish people. Now that we don't have the temple, so the Gemara says that Shulchano shel Adam mechaper lo. Your own table at home. If you have guests, you fulfill the mitzvah hachnasat orchim. You have a simcha. You have a sudat mitzvah. You speak Torah at the table. So you can bring about atonement in your own personal table in the meantime until you can continue to do that after the Beis HaMikdash is restored as well, right? But it's called a table of malachim, right? Like you say, we always say a table fit for a king. That comes from here. This comes from Chazal. Shulchan shel malachim. A table fit for a king, right? Because so there's a reference to David HaMelech, right? Haresh Sudatan. So here you say now that we're talking Sudatan, Sudat, David Malka, Mashiach. We're right now at a Malava Malka, right? So now he goes on to bring this down to beyond the Malava Malka introduction. Yesh la shayachut leParshatan. This has a lot to do with our parsha. Ubemet matzinu sheyesh shayachut miyuchedet ben David HaMelech alav hashalom ubein Lechem Hapanim. In fact, David HaMelech and the Lechem Hapanim have a lot in common. Shalo, kasher ba David el Achimelech, right? The bread on the table, which stays fresh entire week miraculously, is a promise, an indication from the Rabbanu Shalom that he will be mefarnes us, that we will have food, and it'll last for everybody, right? Shalo kasher bo David al Melech. Now, how does that apply to? How does that dovetail with David Melech, Israel? When David came to Achimelech, a Kohen, beborchu mipnei Shol Melech, David was running for his life from Shol, and he came to Achimelech with his soldiers who bikesh mimenu sheyisapek lo ulenarim asher ito davar machal. He begged them, please give me something to eat. We're starving. Al menat lahashiv nafsham, in order to revive ourselves. Achar shekfar lo ba ochel el piem ad ze kama yamim. They were a number of days they didn't eat. Uktiv sham, and the pasuk says, Vayan hakohen, as David, the Kohen answered him, Vayomer ein lechem chol al tachat yadi. We don't have any regular bread, right? Ki'im lechem hakodesh. We only have the holy bread, the lechem hapanim, which goes to the kohanim. Vayitein lo hakohen kodesh, and he gave this bread to David and his soldiers. Ki lo hayasham lechem, ki'im lechem hapanim. He only had the lechem hapanim. Hamosri milifnei Hashem l'shum lechem cham b'yom chalkayu. This is the miracle of the lechem hapanim, right? Matzinu im kain shelo zu bilvad. Not only should David HaMelech merumaz b'parshatan kezer zahav shel Shulchan. Not only does David resemble, because of the gematria, there's a likeness of David and the Shulchan itself, right? But the Shulchan of the Lechem Hapanim, el od zot shemesovev hasibot sibev et hadvarim kach. Also, he's related to the Lechem Hapanim. Shedavid HaMelech yitztarech lechol mi Lechem Hapanim. Now, what's the significance of that? That he had to eat from the Lechem Hapanim. This final column here. V'nei inyano haruchani ubchinato shel Lechem Hapanim. The spirituality, the essential message of the Lechem Hapanim, hu lahamshich et hashpaot hagashmiot v'aruchniot l'kol b'nei Israel. It represents the fact that the Rebbe will provide for us. He'll provide for us our material, physical needs, right? And he'll provide our spiritual needs. It'll be warm. The bread will be there and it'll be warm, right? Ki kain haya chuko lihitlachek l'kol hakohanim. Every Kohen had to get a piece of the Lechem Hapanim, which was impossible that they'll get enough to satisfy them, right? Af im haya magia l'kol echad rak kazayit. But even if every Kohen got a simple kazayit, a little piece of bread, hine achila azot hayeta mitbarechet me'ehem. It was a miraculous bracha in their digestive system, shal kohanim, vayusveim memenu, and they were full. They were satisfied from eating this little amount of bread, right? Ukemoshe katuv biyuma nishtalcha bracha b'lechem hapanim. There was a bracha in the lechem hapanim. V'chol kohen shemagiu kazayit yesh ochlo v'sava yesh ochlo umotir. Some people ate it; they were satisfied. Others were eating, and they had to leave over half a kazayit. Right now, what does that have to do with David HaMelech? Right? David HaMelech was the persona, in a certain sense, of the Lechem Hapanim going to the Kohanim, feeding all of Klal Yisrael through the Kohanim, right? This was David HaMelech, what he did. Famous Gemara in Brachas, right? Shahaya mamshich parnasa l'kol am Yisrael b'chol yom v'yom. Every single day, David, in his time, when he was Melech, made sure that there was food for the entire Am Yisrael. Ukemosha amru chazal b'brachot, Gemara in Brachas, kivan sha'ala amur hashachar, when dawn came, nichnesu chachmei Yisrael etzlo, the chachamim came into him, amru lo adonenu hamelech amcha Yisrael tzrichim parnasa. The Jewish people need food, they need parnasa, and then he began amr lechem, etc., and he gave them instructions how to get the food. So here you see the beautiful Shulchan, the lesson of the Shulchan, the Lechem of the Lechem Hapanim, and how it relates to David HaMelech, okay? So now, go back to page 1. So number 1, we're going to do Rav Hutner. And here, Rav Hutner is going to talk about this as well, but in a bit of a deeper message here. It's going to come out, and it'll, I think, something that we'll get a lot out of. So this was a much longer piece. You see by the numbers in the paragraphs, I only have Hey, Vav, Zayin, Yud, and Yud Aleph. So it's a much longer piece. So let's go. He wants to start with a Ramban about here. V'nagdim b'divrei haRamban ala pasuk zer zav tahor. Now he's going back to the golden rim of the Shulchan. And here's the famous comment of the Ramban on this, the Nachmanides, right? Bir Sora Shulchan. And he he develops the secret of the Shulchan. Ki birchat Hashem me'et briyat ha'olam. The bracha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the day that the world was created, lo tivarei yesh me'ayin. After the the 7 days of creation was yesh me'ayin, creation ex nihilo, right? Creation, something from nothing. That's how the world was created. But that's it. After the 7 days of creation, right? Aval olam kimin hago noheg. After that, sort of, let's call it, Mother Nature takes over, right? It goes by itself, right? Dichtiv, sort of kind of two moments of creation. The original creation in the 7 days from nothing, and then as the world continues, there's everything we do is another level of creation that we create, right, from what we have originally, right? So he says, God said at the end, everything, he saw everything that he did, v'hinei tov me'od. Now God had said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had said a few times before that, hinei tov, it was good. But now at the end he said tov me'od, right? Aval ka'asher yiyeh sham sos davar, shorish davar. Aval ka'asher yiyeh sham shorish davar. Tachol alav habracha v'tosif bo kasher. What does he mean? He said, you have, it's ma'od. Ma'od, it means, what does ma'od mean? It means more, right? It's the next level of creation. We will continue to bring out from the creation, but it has to be based on a shorish davar. It has to be based on something that God created already. We take what he gave us in the original creation, and we take it to the next level. That's ma'od. Ma'od means the next level, it's more, but also look at the letters of ma'od. Ma'od is Adam. Mem Aleph Dalet, it's Adam. So that Adam brings the creation of the world to the next level, but you must utilize a source from the original creation. And that's what we do, right? And he gives two examples. He says, let's go, for example, Ason Kasher Elisha. He brings two pretty well-known stories from Tanakh. Elisha comes across a woman, a Yisoma, a widow, and with a son, and she was being threatened with her life because she happened to have been the wife of Ovadia, the Navi, the prophet, and they were trying to kill they killed her. They wanted to kill her for what he did. He did all kinds of things against these evil people. We're not going to go into the whole Parsha, but she needed help, and she sees a holy man, and he says, "You got to help me." So he says, "Tagidi li ma yesh lach b'bayit." What do you have in the house? We have no food to eat. We have nothing. What do you have? So he said, "V'halo." All she had was a little jug of oil, right? The soch is a vessel, u'melea kol hakeli. And he says, bring me the vessel, and bring me all the vessels, bring me that little jug, and bring me all the vessels you can gather. So she takes all of it, and takes this little jug, and it keeps pouring, and pouring, and pouring, and miraculously, he saved her and protected her, right? And she had food for the rest of her life, and for the entire neighborhood. Okay, Eliyahu, similar miracle with his Rebbe, Elisha's Rebbe Eliyahu, when he came and there was a woman with a sick child, right? Also the same story. Afterwards he revived. The child was actually dead. There was Tchias HaMesim, but he had to give her food also. Kach, she had a tiny little bit of flour and a little bit of oil. So he said to her also, Kach HaKemach, Lo kalta v'tzapachat Hashemen lo chaser. You're never gonna be without bread. You're never gonna be without. This little bit is going to provide for you all of your needs, right? V'chein hashulchan, and the table also. V'lechem hapanim. So now he's comparing this to the shulchan and the lechem hapanim, right? The this is the table and the bread on the table, right? Back in the mikdash, in the mishkan, right? Bo tachol habrocha. The bracha, because we have to have something to start it with, so that we have to have a shorish davar. You have to have that little bit of oil in a vial, right? You have to have a little few crumbs of wheat, right? So you have to have a shorish. So here the Lechem Hapanim and the Shulchan represent that shorish, and that's why from that miracle, the miracle of the Lechem Hapanim and the Holy Mishkan, that is the root of all the parnasa that comes to the world up until until today. So he says like this: Adkan. That's the Ramban. This is the Ramban. Okay, Hainu. He explains Shalom Medubar Kan. By the way, Ki'ilu Yesh Gvul Umida Bekochel Shel Navi L'Shanor HaTeva. It's not coming to tell you only the miracles. The Navi has the power to do the miraculous, right? But he's to an extreme via a miracle. He's showing you that all of life is a miracle. The truth is, what he did was a miracle, right? A little bit of oil. But what we do is also a miracle. The ability to take oil and to plant a little sapling that becomes a tree. That's also a miracle, right? So it's not only that he's telling us that Ramban, that the Navi can do a miracle. El medubar bevirchat Hashem. He's talking about the blessing of Hashem. Me'et chiyut ha'olam. How the miracle of creation, how the world functions after those 7 days of creation, that we take something that we already have from creation and make a go of it, right? So he's showing us a miraculous thing, but everything is a miracle if you take the shorish, right? Ella olam kimin hago noeg, Mother Nature takes over. Adam takes over. Ma'od. That's the Ma'od. Adam, right? Shekatu vayar Elokim hinei tov me'od. Right? Second level, the next level of creation. We continue to create. Adam continues to create. Next paragraph. Ahainu shahabriya mitzad atzma hi tov me'od. So the whole world is potentially good. It's good and it's potential good. It's more, right? And it's our world. Malaya bracha. It's full of bracha, potentially. Shenemar aleh b'shat briyata. As God said, it's tov me'od. Navin dvarav derech mashan. I'm going to show you. Let me just give you a little example, and I actually threw in this example already. Let me give you an example. He says, Masha'anu roim ta'alich shel tzmicha. You see the growth of a flower or something, right? Betoch garin katan. You take a little bit of a seed, right? You plant a seed. Yotzei shefa shel peirot. You plant a little tree, a little seed. It becomes a sapling. The sapling becomes a tree. It starts to bear fruit, and it bears fruit forever, right? Gidul ze bracha shel hitpashtuti, right? There's a development here, and it starts with the adama, right? The adama, adama. We make it happen with the original shoresh. The root is the physical world he created. Ta'alich zeh ta'alich tiviu. That's what we call nature, right? But from the examples the Ramban gives us, he's trying to tell us that everything is a miracle. Kimin hago shalola, Mother Nature, Gidol zeh hanatun v'tivo shel olam bituihu l'tov me'od. This is what tov me'od means. This ability, this Mother Nature, that's tov me'od. Shel habriya. Tov me'od. Pirush hitpashtut hatov. It's about the spreading, the continual development of the good. V'zui bracha. And this is the blessing. Amnam, teva rishoni. But how do you get there? Ze nivgam al yedei oto maisa shebiikvotav nigzar. But they're on the way. There are hurdles on the way, right? There sometimes you run into a pothole, right? Which I actually did on our way here today, right? So you can, right? Kots v'dar der tatzmiachlach, right? Adam and Chava sinned, so they were punished, and And the Rebbe, how did the Rebbe punish him? You remember him. He says, I promised you the world is tov me'od, and you're going to do it, you have to do it, but I'm not going to make it easy for you. Thorns and thistles are going to grow. It's going to be harder for you to bring out the miracle of tov me'od, right? Right? You're going to, it's not without its challenges, right? This second layer of creation it's up to you is not without its challenges, right? It's handicapped, right? That's your challenge. You got to overcome the handicap. Ubetalichi habracha, betalichi habracha shel olam, huchnas gorem shel kilkul v'chisoron. So he created this. It's not easy, right? Ulefi Ramban. Let's go back to the Ramban now. He says, Lamadnu, we learn Yesod Chadash, a new idea. Shepulat Alisha, and really what he's been saying, that what Elisha accomplished miraculously, Eno Rak Inyan Shel Mofet, Shel Shinui Tevel Avad. It's not only a miracle of changing nature, El Shebekan Haya Kocho Shel Elisha, Tzrik, he says in Yiddish, Tzrik zu stellen, to lahachzir, to return at Hatov Ma'od, Hamekori Shel Habriya. Right? He took away the challenges that this woman had, removed that challenge, that handicap, and brought it back to it's easy. All you got to do is make the effort, right? Umamela nimshach shefa letoch oto asoch. So that power now was returned to that little jug, right? Bichdei shetachol habracha, so the bracha should fall. Beikar bo kan bitui lekoach Elisha lesalek et miniat kotzadar. Elisha had the ability to remove that handicap of thorns and thistles that the Rebbe put in our way, right? So he removed that. Bichdei lahagi letov meod. So now tov meod hamakori, we're back to tov meod. Umisham nimshach shefarav. So tov meod. Nemar al abriya al akayim. Imkain tzrichim chefser shel bria shehi mitziyut shel yesh she'alav tachol habrach. But remember, he needed that shorish. He needed that root from the created world. He needed the oil. He needed something, the olive oil, right? Now, finally, he says here, Ulefi zeh aleinu lavin. He's going to make an application, a beautiful application of this idea, right? Ulefi zeh aleinu lavin shema'alat Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael. What do we say about Eretz Yisrael? The mal of Eretz Yisrael, shall zavat chalav udvash, that it's a land flowing in milk and honey. What's the greatness of this statement? Eina ba'akira mitzad mitziyut hachalav v'dvash. The miracle, the natural miracle, and the both level of miracles of Eretz Yisrael is not the chalav udvash, that you have the milk of the animals and the honey of the dates. What's the key word there? Shemorehi al hachuna shel zavat. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. It's about the zavat. It's about the flow, that it continues to come. Shel bracha v'ribui. That is the greatness of Eretz Yisrael, is the zavat. Chalav udvash is, emblematic of all the miracles that will come. Look, we all know that the famous story when Mark Twain came to what was then Palestine, and he described it as that you can't do anything with the country, you can't do anything here. Klal Yisrael comes into Eretz Yisrael, and miraculously, look what we do, right? Eretz, but that it flows because they took the Eretz, the Adama, Adam, Ish Yisrael, took the Adama and made something of it. That second level of Tov Meod. It was Tov Meod, right? V'kan nifna lahatchalat divrei Ramban. Now we can go back to the Ramban binyan asiyat Shulchan, in the Shulchan. That's why we made the Shulchan. Shemityaches lezeh shehashulchan hu siman lemalchut. So the siman is a sign of malchut. A table fit for a king. Osher gedula b'Yisrael, greatness and wealth for the Jewish people. Security, parnasa. Mishulchan zeh yotza ashirut l'kol Yisrael. And all of the parnasa for Klal Yisrael came from that shulchan. All we have to do is get rid of the handicap. We have to work at getting rid of the handicap and elevate ourselves. The bracha will come just by taking a little bit from the original created world, by taking the flour and making it into the bread. Kasher yesham shorish davar tachol alav bracha tosif. Zer zahav, the golden rim. Hu hasiman lashirut. This is obviously an indication of wealth, like the crown on a kohen on the king's head, right? So that he has a crown on his head. He has a golden on his table, right? So Klal Yisrael has that as well. Zeh mishamesh shoresh davar. This is a reference, a simon to, you have to have that original power will come and give us all of that wealth. Lihishpashtut ashirut b'Yisrael, and it'll create the fulfillment of the Jewish people, right? V'nira midvarav she'inyan hamishkan bichlal, the whole idea of the Mishkan in general, getting back to the first piece we did this morning, and this is how it relates to the first piece we did about Mishkan dwelling within us, if we make it happen, hu hachzarat ha'olam l'tov me'od, is returning the world to Tov Me'od. The Mishkan returns the world, just like the Shulchan, but the Mishkan, the broader message of the Mishkan, is to return the world to Tov Me'od, right? By turning things around, right? By taking the Me'od and turning it into Adam, by taking the Shechina within each and every one of us, right? We change the world, right? Zer Zahav Mishkan, Hidugmat Ason, Hashem and Eitz Elisha. Zer Zahav is like the jug by Elisha. Finally, he says, "Umashanemar al Eretz Yisrael zavat chalav udvash." Eretz Yisrael is a land flowing with milk and honey, right? Hakavanahi shekedushat Eretz Yisrael, the sanctity of Eretz Yisrael, tashpia she'al chalav udvash shebo yachol ribui. That it'll continue to flow. It'll continue to grow. We'll have more milk and more honey and more goodness, right? Hadgasha kan, the emphasis here is al koach habracha hatov me'od, the next stage, right? It's flowing, it's continuing flow. Val yudei ve'al yado tosefet bracha, and there'll be an increased bracha. Shebezeh doma kedushat Eretz Yisrael, the kedushat hashulchan b'mishkan l'zer zahav. So that the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael also is the same lesson, right? In a broader sense, you have the Shulchan, you have the Mishkan in Eretz Yisrael, and Yerushalayim in the temple, and you have all of Eretz Yisrael. This is the whole message of HaKadosh Baruch Hu living amongst us, that the main Shechina is amongst us, right? From the Shulchan to the Mishkan to all of Eretz Yisrael to the rest of the world. Okay?